Hello and welcome back to AIBC Summit YouTube channel. We're here to bring you news on all things blockchain and crypto. So if you are a fan of the space or you're looking to learn that little bit more, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. Now, Gavin Brown, Senior Economics Lecturer at the University of Liverpool, joins me on the line. Gavin, how are you today?
Hi, Jessica. Yeah, well here. Thank you. How are you?
Very good. And I want to jump straight in because you have been very busy since our recent digital conference in September. You actually published an article discussing what COVID-19 app download numbers tell us about the potential of the new CBDC digital currency adoption.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from my perspective, the first thing was the idea of the almost like a technological solution being required at almost a nation state or even international level to try and help us combat something. So obviously in the case of COVID-19, it's the idea of a track and trace app that if we all use it together, then obviously as a nation, as a population, we stand to gain from that kind of effect. But obviously at the same time, what surprised me was the sort of notion that, you know, a lot of people kind of resist that visibility on their personal lives, which equally, you know, I can understand as well. And it almost got me thinking to the idea with, especially as China's kind of pushing on with their CBDC, etc. I just suddenly thought to myself, I wonder what the kind of participation rates are like in terms of things like track and trace from a health perspective, because quite naturally, if a CBDC such as a digital euro ever does find its way, you know, into our digital pockets, if I can use that phrase, then it will be offering the same kind of sacrifice, if you will, of personal liberties to the government and to the nation state. So I was just keen to understand, you know, why and how many people are subscribing to the track and trace app to help their own health, to help the health of others, and whether that could be used as almost like a predictor or a marker for what participation might look like for a CBDC if and when it comes along.
And it does sound like an interesting concept. So what were some of your findings? Because I can imagine that it probably paints quite a good picture of CBDC adoption worldwide, maybe some countries being more progressive and more receptive positively than others.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be dead right with that. I mean, that was my kind of hypothesis as well. And then obviously looking at the numbers broadly across, you know, most of Europe and across most kind of sort of democratic nations, if you like, uptake was anywhere between about sort of 10-11% right the way up to about sort of 30-35%. Generally speaking, though, most countries were around the sort of 25% mark of their population of number of downloads compared with total population. Obviously, we've got to caveat that a little bit in terms of, you know, the populations have got, you know, sort of young and old people in there who may or may not be eligible or willing to look at a CBDC. But nonetheless, it was around about a quarter of the population was downloading a sort of track and trace app. Whereas one of the things I saw was the contrast, almost like with an approach that we have in China, was the idea that it almost was being pushed in a much more proactive way, if you like, so that, you know, the app itself you know, is needed to operate in your daily lives. It's very difficult to operate without it. You know, typically the app, if you're there in China on a track and trace app, is offering you almost like a red, amber, green traffic light system, whereby, you know, red means you have to stay at home, green means you're fine and you're able to go to restaurants and do different things, and amber means you've potentially come into contact or close to someone who's either tested positive or is suspected of testing positive. So very much, you know, a difference there in participation and a difference in terms of how that track and trace app was being used, whether it was in more of a passive way or more of a, not necessarily aggressive way, but certainly a proactive way, I think is the way I would describe it.
And you've mentioned China there and its proactive approach when it comes to track and trace. Also, China's shown a very forward stance on central bank digital currencies. So yeah, what can the rest of the world learn from this approach that we have seen from China in both regards, actually?
Yeah, I mean, that's I think there's a lot to be learned there. I mean, recently, I think most of the sort of blockchain and crypto space talking about the way the sort of Chinese authorities have been trying to offer more of a carrot than a stick, if you like, in terms of uptake for a lot of the pilot schemes that are going on with the digital one at the moment. I thought one of the really good ones was in Shenzhen in the Guangdong province. So it's a very, very big city. I think it's well in excess of 15 million population. And they've got they offered a lottery offering 50,000 potential winners some digital currency if they were to win, and around about 15% of the city's population signed up for that. Now, just multiplying that through in basic terms, that meant about 1.9 million people in that city have now signed up for the digital currency project, not because they were made to, but rather because they were incentivized by the offer of some potential free digital currency. So I think quite innovative things like that, where they're offered almost like an inducement, is an interesting idea. And just to draw the parallel back again with the sort of track and trace idea, there's an article over the summer in the Harvard Business Review where a lot of the participation or lack of participation in track and trace, a couple of academics over in the States were sort of saying, we need to offer people an inducement, what we call in economics a nudge, to try and sign up for these things, because otherwise there's more disincentive, if you like, than incentive to actually, sort of move into that new technological usage, if you will.
And it's really interesting, and 2020 as a year has been a very good example of moving progressively towards this digital era and having more accelerated use of Zoom, but even bank card payments as opposed to cash. So in general, are you saying that actually what we have seen with track and trace and also this kind of digital push forward is actually positive for central bank digital currencies to be implemented maybe sooner than we were expecting, say 2019?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Chinese are kind of committed to a much more accelerated timescale. I mean, mainly due to the fact that, they kind of shocked the world when they came out and said they've been researching this since 2014. So for them, this is part of a longer term strategy. This is not knee jerk in any way. Whereas, we're only 12 months on from people like the Bank of International Settlements, the central bank of central banks, beginning to announce research projects with the Bank of England and other sort of central banks around the world. So I think very much a lot of countries in the West in particular are playing catch up with respect to the Chinese. The other kind of issue we've got as well is with CBDCs. They're very there's lots of competing designs in terms of how they might work. We've got sort of wholesale versus retail models, whether it's going to be cross-border or whether it's going to be purely a nation state level. But I guess the big thing that I was almost trying to infer with my article was the idea that we shouldn't take for granted that a CBDC is going to be the future of money that's wanted by the people, quite simply because of this sacrifice of personal liberty. The idea is that your government can suddenly have full visibility in terms of not just where you are, but what you're spending it and how you're spending it. And a lot of the motivation with a CBDC, at least one of the motivations, is the idea of banking the unbanked, something that we in the sort of crypto blockchain space are very interested in. But the problem is that with a lot of those individuals, they will be operating outside of the traditional financial system for whatever means they see fit. And something like a CBDC, which sacrifices their personal liberties, they might not still be willing to subscribe to that. So, the idea that a CBDC might be able to sort of keep the sort of decentralized cryptocurrencies at bay, I'm perhaps less convinced of that strength now, and would be kind of more bullish, therefore, on traditional cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and the altcoins, but perhaps also on corporate issued currencies. The idea that these corporations might be able and willing to incentivize us into using their payment platform. So obviously Facebook with their Libra is perhaps the most famous example of that, yet to arrive though.
Very interesting indeed, and I'm sure we'll catch up as it progresses as well. But Gavin, thank you so much, and the article we have linked in the description of the YouTube video as well, so thank you for contributing to that. Also, thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Jessica. Take care.
Thank you. That's all from myself and Gavin, but we'd love to hear how you found this segment, so share your thoughts in the comments below.